most of the time. Right. So I'm going to walk through, now that you have that, and I want you to think about that exercise, and if you want, do it on a regular basis. It's a really fantastic way to just get recentered and come back in. And once we feel that for ourselves, given to us, it's so easy to give it out to other people. And we don't need anybody else to actually come right up and say, no, I do. I think you're the most incredible person. Yes. So that's what I want you to think about and remember as you're going along. So we're going to talk about what makes someone a great influencer. Because what I know is we can't change the world whole scale. We can't even change the region whole scale. And we can change ourselves starting right now today, like so many of you do. And we can change the situation between us and another person through these very things that we're talking about. And as we change that situation, one person after another, like the ripple effect in a river, and the bigger our influence grows, the more we are actually able to accomplish these things inside out, easily. And I do know what I'm talking about because I've been doing this for a long time. And every once in a while, the universe allows me to see the ripple effects of what I've been doing. People I have never met who are and have become influencers in the world, dot connecting to dot by people I have worked with. And that is an amazing thing. I look at my own mentors and the people who influence my life, and I know that those dots connect backwards, those ripples continue on before me, right? And that's who we are. So what makes someone a great influencer? I want you to ask that question as we're walking through this. The 8 steps of influence. The first one is listening and hearing. So these are going to be like, like some of these, and others may be a little bit more, but I want you to actually drop down into it and think about the listening and hearing, because we all do this, where we hear something that somebody's saying so that we can say what we want to say, right? And sometimes people do that and they just need to be heard. And when that happens, how do we not take it personally? How do we then change the whole purpose of that conversation on our side? Simply to just witness that person and show up. This is the part where influence matters, where it enters in. Because we end up in these conversations all the time. I've had so many of them at the conference. I've met amazing people, and they want to tell me they're so passionate about what they're doing, and they never ask any questions back. And so I have that opportunity in that moment to switch the conversation into, you want and need to be seen, and I can give you that. I choose to give you that. I choose to honor who you are. And in the moment that I honor who you are, I've honored myself, and something changes. It changes. So, listening and hearing. Now I'm going to put that up, and what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about listening and hearing as an influencer?
I'm ready. If you are.
What do you think of as an influencer? You are an influencer about listening and hearing.
Well, it's interesting when I looked at the 2 words, and they, although at first glance they may appear to be the same thing, they're quite different, in fact. That's what I see. Listening is one thing, hearing is another.
And what are those things?
Well, listening is not, you can be listening but not really hearing because you have your own agenda going on while you appear to be listening. If you're really hearing what the person is saying, then to me, you truly are listening, and they're combined.
Beautifully said. What else? Excellent.
First thing that comes to mind for me is that there's a fine line between persuasion and manipulation, and listening and hearing are tools of both. That we have to be critical about how we utilize listening and hearing as practices in order to examine ourselves so that we don't cross that fine line.
That's fantastic. Hold on. So persuasion and manipulation versus listening and hearing. Like you nailed something really important, didn't you? Right? Persuasion and manipulation, because influence can be used either way, right? And what we're focusing on today is the influence that has the power to bring out the very best in people and lift them. However, persuasion and manipulation, what's the difference between those two? Between persuasion, manipulation, and influence to actually bring out the best and to achieve a cause? What is the difference?
It's difficult to parse out in a similar way that listening and hearing, people can use both words to parse out different aspects of the same thing. Manipulation as a whole has more negative and various connotations, whereas persuasion can be used for the good of others and for one's own good. Manipulation normally is more self-seeking and is more power-centric as a whole, for the sake of advancing one's own power rather than pursuing a holistic or external good.
Good and fantastic. I'm so glad that you jumped right into the deep end of the pool. I love that.
Yes, I just wanted to say that listening involves more hearing sounds and words, but hearing involves concentration and understanding. Okay, I could listen to you, but like you said, my mind is already made up anyway. I just go ahead and do what I wanted to do. But if I hear you, and if I understand what you're saying, I'm considering the impact of what you're saying, and so the hearing usually introduces compassion into the whole conversation. Then the listening could produce no effects whatsoever. Yes, I heard everything you said, but I'm still going to kill you. God forbid.
God forbid. Yes, so she said hearing introduces compassion. We'll have to have a little bit. Which is also an excellent point. I'm going to bring this all in what you said all together, and that is, what is the outcome we want to achieve? And we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. The outcome that we want to achieve, the motivation for why we are engaged. So you look at persuasion, right? And you look at manipulation. And as you look at those two verses and influence itself, you can start to see how those things break down. So, so number 2 is accountability to self. This is the next step that I see in the 8 steps of influence. Accountability to self means that we are not relying upon somebody else to be responsible for what? How, like in this conversation here at the conference, these conversations that you've been having, or when you are engaged in a very important conversation and you are really wanting a specific outcome from that, what is the accountability to self? Are you able to actually enter into that conversation and let go of what it is you want out of it long enough to be able to hear and understand the other person? Are you able to actually really hear that person because you're going to stay engaged? Accountability to self also means that we own our motivations. What is it you want out of it? What is it you want? An influencer always recognizes that they are responsible to themselves for anything and everything they create, right? And this is what I think of when I say accountability to self. Principles only matter when they're inconvenient. What I mean by that is when we make it about us and we lose that ability to really refer back to ourselves, to be accountable to ourselves, we are now actually trying to get something out of it and we're not operating by our principles. Correct? When we're going to operate by principles, the only way that we know that we are is when it becomes hard to do so, when we have to put them to the test in the moment. And if we're going to be an influencer, or if we're going to recognize we are an influencer, then we know that we are committed to a higher goal, and we're constantly seeking to meet that goal. And we talked about this already. Do I hold conflict against another? This is such an important piece in the influencer model. because this is where the actual work happens on a moment-to-moment basis. Right now, think about this in your own lives and in your own moments right now. Do you hold conflict against another person? Anybody? Yes. This is yes. Yes. It's pretty human, isn't it? It's pretty human to have those moments where we hold conflict against another. And how do we feel when we hold conflict against another person?
On the inside.
Tall on the inside.
Oh, it's busted on the inside. Yeah.
You try to avoid them.
We try to avoid them.
Yeah.
Great.
Sometimes you feel that why face them? No? It's better that you avoid such situations so that what is inside doesn't come to the fore.
Ah.
We don't want to be impolite, we don't want to be insulting.
But we have these feelings, right?
We have the feelings, we can't overcome them. So best to stay away. Not to create a situation where both of us can be uncomfortable.
Good. Yes, exactly.
Isn't that the best way to handle it? Conflict.
Yes. Well, I don't know. We'll talk about that.
I think it's easier said than done to, say, okay, I wouldn't go down there and dirty my hands or go down to those depths. But there are times when it's easy to walk away from the contentious person or situation. But then it's easier to physically walk away, but mentally it's very difficult to let it go. And that is where I think we get, as you rightly said, torn inside, because it's a bugbear which just refuses to go, and you keep brooding, and you start then sending out vibes which influence others, poor things who had nothing to do with it in the first place, but because they're in the firing line get affected. So I think one way to get over it is to rationalize it a little, learn the power of detachment and say, okay, there's somebody else who'll sort it out and I need it. But it's a tough one. It's a very tough one.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Yes.
I'd like to think conflict as positive. I embrace conflict because I think conflict can be dealt with in a way that you can be constructive out of it. From conflict comes a resolve when you tackle it in the right way.
Beautifully said. I love that. I love that you've given an alternate perspective to the one that we're talking about, and it absolutely applies to what we're saying, and I want to bring that